Hey, this is Danny Johnson, and I'm going to be applying this floor coating to my new garage. This is from Rust-oleum, and it's the Rock Solid. So it's not really an epoxy. It's actually a Polycuramine, if I pronounce that right. And so I did the epoxy last time. It's pretty much the same process as putting it on. You have to etch the floor, and then you have to let that fully dry. Then you apply the two-part kit. And so I'll show you kind of what's involved here. This is a 2.5 car kit. They sell these in 1 car kits or 2.5 as it appears. So it just has 2 pouches since it's the 2.5 car. And so this is the part A and B that you'll end up mixing together. You'll see that a little bit later in the video. So this comes with 2 of those bags. And to prepare the concrete, we have this. It's like an acid etching compound. So basically we're just going to fill 2 gallons of water into this can here, and we're going to pour this pouch in and shake it up real good. And then we're going to water this over the cement, and then with this bristled brush we're going to scrub the floor real good, and that's going to create kind of an abrasiveness to the concrete so that the compound can adhere to it. So that comes in the kit as well. They also have these special rollers. Apparently you can't use regular rollers like you would on your walls. They're kind of a special kind. And then the kit also has the flakes that will be spreading on there as well. So we'll show you this. It's going to take a day or 2 because you have to put on the acid, etch the floor, and then let that completely dry for 24 hours. Then after that you can apply the actual coating, and then that's supposed to dry for another 24 hours or so. If it's epoxy, it's even longer than that. This stuff dries a little bit faster, but if you have high performance tires like my Mickey Thompson drag radials, you have to let it cure even longer. So if I put the car in the garage, I'm going to put cardboard down first, because when I did the epoxy last time, even though I waited 72 hours, I pulled the car onto the garage floor, and when I pulled off, it kept some of the rubber and just basically glued to the ground. So you have to be very careful with it for that reason. So we'll get started, and we'll fill this full of 2 gallons of water and add in our acid, and we'll pretty much go from there. But what we want to do first is just get the garage completely wet. And if you look around now, it's a brand new construction home. So one thing you do want to make sure is that it's cured at least 28 days if it's new concrete. And we're well past that, so we'll be okay there. But everything's cleaned out, and we're going to just start the etching process. Okay, so next we're going to mix this etch concentrate, the acid stuff in here. So the best way to get it to mix properly is pour it in as you're adding the water. That way it kind of mixes together. So we're doing 2 gallons of water for every pouch. This is a 2-gallon container. And then as we pour it on here and go back and forth with the bristle brush, we'll go one way and then the other way, so vertical and horizontal. So now as you start to apply the acid, as you can see we got the entire garage floor wet. So as you apply the acid, you want to work in 10 by 10 foot sections, and you want to keep the water pretty much flowing. So just keep it wet. And so now as you pour the acid out, it's kind of like painting. You don't want to paint yourself into a corner. So do it one section at a time, leaning towards the end of the garage. So you want to take your bristle brush, and you want to be real aggressive. can already tell you right here it's somewhat smooth. Where I've etched, you can feel it really grippy. So you know the acid's working. It's seriously like walking on Velcro. So once you've completed that section, rinse it real good. Just kind of spray all the acid and everything back out. And they say it shouldn't hurt any of your driveway or plants or anything. So basically now we're just washing this off. And so now this is all etched and you can really feel it. So it's good. It's going to adhere. It's going to be a nice surface for the compound to adhere to. So we're just going to do that for the entire garage. Just 10 by 10 sections. We'll scrub this way. Make it all the way down and then we'll come back and scrub that way. So one thing that's really important as you're getting this with the acid, make sure you get your bristles down inside the cracks. Because you want to be getting the edges here and get those real good and clean and acid baths so that the floor sealant will grab onto it real well. Because it's my opinion that if it's going to start chipping or breaking away somewhere, it'll be on these cracks as you're rolling a floor jack through it or something like that. So you want to make sure that you scrub these real good. Okay, so then you want to give it a real good rinse. You don't want any of that acidic powder floating around when you're done as it dries out, so get as much of it off as you can. And just rinse it thoroughly. Just go over it a few times, splash water through the cracks one way and then down to get it out. So the acid appears to have a yellow tint to it. At least that's the way it's looking. So once that kind of disappears and you have just clean water, then you know you've got it all. Okay, so the floor is drying up pretty good now. You'll see there's still a few puddles. We're gonna leave it for the night. We'll come back tomorrow. We're gonna let it cure a good 24 hours and then start applying our coating. So as you can see, you'll see a huge difference in the floor now. There's a white type look to it. It looks like a powder and you want to make sure that there's not any actual powder left. So yeah, there's none of that acid left. In some areas it's a little thicker than others, so we'll sweep it out with a broom as well before we start tomorrow. But I just wanted to show you this. As it's drying, you can see it's definitely has a different look to it now. And so that's good. We have it real clean and it's gonna really be nice to have that compound just adhere to this since it's all etched. Okay, so we're back in the garage. Everything's drying out pretty well. In the meantime, we've gone through and put painter's tape up. Prep work's never really any fun, but the more you do, the better the job's going to turn out and it'll be a lot easier for you. In this case, we put the tape all the way up against the wall so we can roll the roller all the way up to the wall and not have to worry about it marking up the wall. So we went all the way around. We even did a seam here at the front of the garage. This is where the epoxy is going to end. We didn't want to do this trim because as the garage door goes down and closes, I don't like the look of it with a different color showing past the garage door. So we put painter's tape all the way down into the crack and so we'll be able to paint up to that line. We have our broom back here. We've been sweeping out any debris that's left on the floor. Everything looks pretty good. We also bought, which is not included in the kit, the roller end, as well as an extension pole to roll this on with. And very important, we also bought another mini bucket with a paintbrush. And the reason why this is so important is because as this coating starts to activate, it will start to harden. So especially if you do an epoxy. And so what you want to do is open and use one kit at a time. And we're going to go through here. As soon as the kit's been activated, I'm going to have my wife go through and paint all of the cracks and up inside the little border as needed. Then we'll just pour a ribbon of the coating down on the floor and we'll roll the rest of it on with our paint roller. So we're still just waiting to make sure everything's completely dried out. It's a hot day, so luckily everything's drying out pretty well. And soon we'll be able to start applying our coating. So as we start with this, make sure you don't paint yourself into a corner. So we're going to go along this back wall towards us. And once we get across the garage and we get into our one car, then we're going to go from the front to the back. Okay, so take your part A and B pouch here and just start mixing it around first. Don't break the seal yet. There is a seal between the two of them, and that's what we're going to do to activate them. But first we want to move it around, make sure there's no clumps in it, and just to get it good and mixed up and ready to go. It says to do this for about a minute or so. I've been doing it a little bit since before we've been videotaping, so we're probably about ready now to mix the two together. Just make sure it's all good. So we're going to take our part A, which is here, and we're going to start rolling it up like a bag of toothpaste. And as we push hard enough, the pressure is going to burst it into that second bag there. So now that the two are mixing, you want to shake it back and forth and just get it good. So once you've bursted it together and they're mixing, you want to do this for about 2 to 3 minutes, side to side, up and down, and just shake it good. You really want these two components to mix properly and thoroughly, so we're going to do this for about 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, so we're going to start off by painting all these cracks. That way we can just pass the roller over the top. And just remember, as soon as you activate this formula, it's going to start to harden. So you want to keep a good pace going, but don't freak out and go too fast. So we'll just do this and then we'll pour a ribbon of it and then start using our paintbrush, or our roller. Next, pour a ribbon of the product down and then just use the roller to spread it back and forth. And then do a M or W pattern. Just make sure you get everything covered. Roll it on. This stuff doesn't really go on too thick compared to the actual epoxy. Once you have a few feet down, we're going to throw the flakes on it. Make sure that when you scatter the flakes, you do leave about a foot or so of unflaked area, so that you can then apply your next section without rolling over the flakes again. So we're going to start casting the flakes out about there, forward. Okay, so spreading these flakes is kind of tricky. Start with fewer rather than more as you're kind of testing how much it is. And so a good way to do it is to pinch them and just kind of toss them that way. When you're up against a corner, something I like to do, I call it backboard, like in basketball. If you hit the wall with them, they bounce and it seems to spread them out pretty evenly. So you can try that if you want. If you're near a wall, just throw them at the wall. So I just pinched a few of these flakes and threw them out. You can go as condensed or as light as you want. That's about as many as I like for that area. Then I left some room down here where the flakes aren't that we're going to continue painting. One thing I also want to mention is if you mess up and throw too much of the flakes in one area and you don't like the way it looks, just pull that paint roller back out without adding any more epoxy on it. Just use the roller itself and just roll right over it and it will clean them up. It'll bury the ones that are there and you can just toss a few more down. So we're making our way across here, and this is an oversized garage. It's 23 feet deep, but this is what one of the 2.5 car kits did. I don't know, we did put it on somewhat thick, which is what I wanted to do. You can take it and really get every little bit of it out like this and probably make it stretch a little farther, but we let it roll on until we were comfortable with it. It's turning out really nice. One thing to mention, you will find little pieces of debris, little rocks. See, I think this is one right there. Touch it with your finger, you can pull it up, throw it away, and then just smooth out over where that was. Inevitably, you will find rocks and little things like that. But it's turning out pretty well, so we're just gonna keep moving across the garage. Alright, so we just finished up here. It went on real well. Compared to the epoxy that I did last time, this Polycuramine, whatever you call it, went on pretty easily. It did start to harden up towards the end of each kit, which the epoxy does as well, but I think this was a little more workable than the epoxy and didn't harden up quite as bad as the epoxy did. One thing to mention is we ended up using 3 of the 2.5 car kits. So I'd say that we could have spread it out a little thinner and maybe it would have worked out to what they said it would, but in my opinion, it's on as thick as it should be right now, so prepare to buy more than what you think you'll need, and then you can always return what you don't use. But other than that, it turned out pretty good. We're going to give it the full cure time here before we walk on it, and once again, since my car has the drag radial tires on it, I'm going to put cardboard down or something before I try to park my car on it, because last time with the epoxy it pulled the rubber right off the tires. So anyway, this is what it looks like now, and one thing to mention, make sure you have backup supplies with you, because we were in the middle of one kit that was already starting to harden when our roller broke, and so we had to stop what we were doing and go get another one. So I used the rest of that kit to paint the cracks in the meantime. So then my wife ran and got more supplies. So just keep that in mind. This stuff, once it starts once you start applying it, it's going to start hardening. So if you have anything like that happen, you're going to be up the creek without a paddle. Anyway, so that's what it looks like compared to the epoxy. It seems pretty similar at this point, and so we'll give it a go. Thanks for watching. Go ahead and remove the tape before the epoxy fully hardens. Otherwise it's going to be tough because it will glue itself to the floor. I'm very happy with how that floor turned out. It's curing very nicely. And apparently I went on thick in a lot of places, but that's the way I wanted to do it, so I think it looks real good.